G'day, everyone. Johnny's here very early. G'day, Johnny. Nice to see you, mate. And how are you, Lukey? Well, not many people are here today. Maybe Friday was a bad day. Anyway, I've got things to do on Sunday, so I just couldn't squeeze that in. Question. Yes, good. You're using the Q. Oh, we'll be mucking around with like StreamYard. They've got new, like, I'll just show you. Minimize and maximize. Sorry about the crackling sore throat. But unfortunately, in my work environment, you got people basically left, right, and centre, coughing and sneezing and whatever else. It is what it is when you work in an office constantly, and people are just shedding and shedding and shedding. So you still get a low grade effect. You can't avoid it. It's just the reality of not working outdoors and working indoors. I've heard we need much more vitamin C when dealing with periods of stress and supplementing lowers cortisol. What does that mean for carnivores? Obviously, we live in a world. We live in a world that is very different than the ancestral world. That's definitely true. But I wouldn't actually be using ascorbic acid, because ascorbic acid will turn into oxalate. And that's a bit of a problem when it does turn into oxalate. Hello, Deborah. Now, we have inside, like, what happens is when we eat animal foods, the animal food itself, inside every single cell of the animal, like our cells and every other animal species on this planet, will have inside its around the nucleus, you've got the endoplasmic reticulum. Well, in there, you'll have this reduced form of vitamin C, which is called dehydroxyascorbic acid. What that is a sort of a storage form of vitamin C. That means when any species takes in ascorbic acid from the food, it places it in there. And around this endoplasmic reticulum, where it actually binds in a very solid way. That means there's nothing but a specific enzyme that converts it back to ascorbic acid that can actually release it. So there's nothing inside the cell that can release it. So it's actually bound there like really solid. It's like it's super glued. So the bonding is very considered one of the strongest bonds that you find in the body. There are others, but that's one of the strongest bonds. And what it means is that every single cell in any species that we also consume, we take dehydroxyascorbic acid, which means that this explains that when you cook, remember Napoleon cooked the meat so people wouldn't suffer from pathogens, and he cooked the meat that he served up to his troops that had scurvy, and the horse meat, that is, and cured them from scurvy. Well, what do you think was happening? And even though they were eating kibble at the same time as they were eating, you would say, well, if there was very little in the meat, wouldn't it actually inhibit the uptake of ascorbic acid by the carbohydrates that they were also eating, these soldiers? Yes. So how did the dehydroascorbic acid get in there from the meat then? Well, it goes through GLUT1, and GLUT1 doesn't compete with glucose via the GLUT4 receptor. So ascorbic acid goes through GLUT4, dehydroascorbic acid goes through GLUT1. So that's how we get. And when you cook and there's ascorbic acid inside the meat, it actually breaks down to dehydroascorbic acid. And so we absorb the dehydroascorbic acid, we lock it into the endoplasmic reticulum, and then when the cells need it, they use it. Much smarter way in mammalian physiology, much smarter way than having it excessive circulating in the actual bloodstream. Nothing in excess is a good thing. And so though that stuff in the bloodstream, God, I'm actually sweating today. I've had the doors shut because there's been, smoke earlier. So yeah, the place has become like a furnace. I closed it, even though it's winter, it's become really uncomfortable in here. Anyway, sorry about that. So getting back to it with my crackling voice. So we have that mechanism, like many other mammals, to take in via GLUT1, the dehydroascorbic acid, then store it inside our cells around in a very protected way. And then when we need it, the body goes, the enzymes go, they release it, they convert it, they recycle it back to ascorbic acid. And dehydroascorbic acid also can be converted by also glutathione once it's in like the free form moving around in the bloodstream. So it can recycle it as well. So there's a whole lot of mechanisms. The body's like a Swiss Army knife. It has all these mechanisms that can turn, a certain molecule in one direction to ascorbic acid, then back to dehydroascorbic acid. It has a lot of these mechanisms. Excess amount in the bloodstream, what happens to excess amount in the bloodstream? It ends up going through the kidneys as oxalate. So not a good idea to get it from plants or from supplements in large amounts to deal with stress. So animal foods will give us more than enough. And in the end of the day, intracellular antioxidant systems like glutathione, superoxide dismutase, and catalase are the ones that actually we need. And when we look at all mammalian studies, when you give mammals, obviously we can't lock people up and do long-term studies, but we do notice that when there are any studies looking at supplements like vitamin C, vitamin E, and all that sort of stuff, you don't see much benefits from high doses. In some cases, you even see associated side effects. So, and from animals, we see a shorter lifespan because it's interfering with the regulation of the antioxidant systems, the intracellular, because we need some stress. Our bodies need some oxidative stress, not a lot, but some, in order to basically, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, so to speak, what we call hormesis. And I say excess hormesis is not required. Exercise is more than enough hormesis. So you don't see all these crazy Maasais doing these crazy things for hormesis, do you? It's only us modern humans that have gone crazy on that sort of stuff. Too much or too little is always a problem. There's a sort of a homeostasis for a lot of things. And it goes the same thing for the antioxidant systems as well. And why is non-heme iron pro-inflammatory? And who said it was pro-inflammatory? It's associated, but it's not pro-inflammatory. So heme iron you'll find in dairy, non-heme iron you'll find in dairy, and you'll find in eggs as well. And the body does have mechanisms to convert it back to heme. If you overcook meat, you can actually degrade some of the heme into non-heme. So these sort of arguments that people put, I've gone down all these rabbit holes, Johnny, and believe me, the body's got so many Swiss Army knife enzymes to be able to convert things back and forward. all the things. It's all just reductionist science, associated nonsense. Really efficacious and really concrete, strong studies to really tease out these things don't exist. It's just nonsense. A lot of people, you'll get people from the plant-based community creating nonsense, and you'll get from the low-carb community also people creating nonsense. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality. I'll criticize both sides, like Bart does. I'll give them stick because it's wrong. It's charlatanism. It's not right to basically be promoting nonsense, which a lot of people do, unfortunately. I don't know why they do it. Don't ask me. They jump on the next study that comes out. Most of the studies, 99% of studies are junk. They've been poorly done and poorly, you could say, and also their conclusions or their analysis of the data is also problematic on a number of levels. You'll get things like adjustments to the data, or where you see the creeping in of their belief systems. I mean, we've even seen it just recently in some of the low carb and even carnivore-ish type people that have been doing certain research that the professors basically and TED have basically taken out the stick to them. And it's the same sort of dribble that we've seen constantly. And it's pretty much sickening and annoying because it detracts from, proper science. And, they should be honest. We can't do long-term randomized control lock-in studies. They should be honest about that and say these are associated studies which we've noticed certain relationships, but we're uncertain of what is driving these relationships. Be really conservative in what you say in terms of what you think, and then be separate and saying this is everything the data does not show, which is practically 99%. And there are some areas here that may be of interest to further investigate. Had they done that, approached that in that way, they would have done, you could say, they would have applied properly both the Bradford Hill criteria and the scientific method, but they didn't, so they deserve to be chastised. And this is the problem we find across the board with a lot of academics. There is sort of, publish or perish. You have to have a certain amount. And if you go back and look at the past, like when we look at studies that were done in the distant past, there were very few. I mean, people like, Price and many others and of researchers in the past, probably only in their whole life, maybe have spent most of their time in the labs doing research or going out and doing observational research amongst tribal groups. And they've probably published, maybe 3 to 5 studies in their whole life. But they actually had something to say when they published those. Where modern today, universities are rated wrongly, but are rated based on the amount of crap they produce, which is citations and studies. So what they do is they create a whole lot of studies, and then their mates at another university will cite that stuff, and they will cite their stuff, and they will sort of cross-support them, sometimes even pay people to cite their studies in order to basically get their studies up the rankings. It's all about rankings, money, institutional sort of prestige, and that sort of stuff. So it's lost the scientific purity. That got lost back in the 80s and 90s, where science became extremely corrupted. Now, there is still some fairly good mechanistic research and stuff that I sometimes bring to you guys, some mechanistic, but in many cases, not even North American or European, tends to be Asian and other parts of the world that still do, some of their institutions still do proper science. I've even shown you stuff from Iran where some people are doing proper science, and going into labs and actually doing measurements, proper measurements, rather than just assuming or doing reviews and crap like that on other people's faulty data, because that's what a lot of citations and a lot of other studies are doing. So it's, don't fall for this associated nonsense is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, it's good to see you. Good to see quite a few people that, a few people are missing in action. I haven't seen for a while. It'd be good if they would come back and follow. Anyway, how true is it that the average adult only needs around 1 milligram of iron a day and more? That puts us long-term iron overload risk. There's not one study, Lukey, that actually can tell us exactly what we need. Remember, your liver can get rid of most of the excess. So when it comes to most of the ions, if you're eating enough, let me put it this way. If you're eating enough, what's the favorite molecule? Enough meat to get taurine, and have enough taurine in your diet from the meat. But also, I'm not talking about supplementary, is more for biohacking. You'll regulate your ions through your system. You'll also have a proper functioning gallbladder, because you're getting choline, you're getting, taurine, which helps in the functioning of producing proper bile and proper functioning of your gallbladder. If you're doing that, you can actually excrete excess minerals. So even if you're taking more than the body needs, you can excrete them through the bile. Manganese. What do vegans get manganese toxicity? Because they got a bad gallbladder that's not functioning properly, because they're not giving it the animal nutritions. So they can't excrete, and you get concentrations because manganese is higher in crustaceans and higher in plant foods. So if you're eating as a carnivore crustaceans, you're going to get slightly more. And if you're eating a lot of plants, you're going to get a hell of a lot more. And if you don't have a good functioning gallbladder, you can't excrete it. And the same thing with iron, with every single mineral, copper, whatever. If you don't have a good functioning gallbladder, you cannot excrete excess minerals and fat-soluble vitamins. Got it? Because even retinol excess will get excreted. Same thing with vitamin D. Same thing with E, K. It'll get excreted through the bile. You don't have good bile, you got a problem. But don't blame the diet for the problem that a previous diet, sad diet, Fagunarized diet, or whatever created. So we need to be very careful, and that's why I usually say to people, what were you doing before? Have you checked these things? And so usually when people do, then they go, oh, that's why. I go, yes. So you need to go avoid certain foods, minimize and eat certain types of proteins and certain types of things that are going to have a slightly lower level. Sort out your gallbladder, and then that'll all regulate itself. So it's these things. And unfortunately, most people are fairly ignorant about that reality. And, we end up where we end up. So I would not be concerned. I think it's nonsense. I've never seen people that have basically usually have iron overload are usually on SAD diets. They're not on carnivorous diets or low carb diets. They're usually people that have got derangements in, in regulation of their bodies and are out of homeostasis. And that's why they're sick as well, and they've got these other conditions. I've seen plenty of people go on a carnivore diet, clean carnivore diet, and fix their hemochromatosis. And in particular with taurine, if they supplement, if they're not producing enough for whatever genetic reasons, there are rare genetic disorders that also don't synthesize enough taurine. And so you need to eat foods that are much higher in taurine, like some of the seafood and stuff like that. And if you're not consuming that seafood and you're only eating ruminants, because remember, even the N15 data showed that people were consuming ruminants mainly, but also a lot of river fish or coastal fish, because their settlements were along rivers and coastlines. That's where they were getting. You go to Aboriginal communities out in Arnhem Land and whatever else, and they consume a lot of coastal fish and crustaceans and stuff like that. So I've looked into this sort of stuff, and it's quite clear how people are getting stuff where we don't have the regulation. Remember, oysters, just 100 grams of oysters will give you 2.2 grams of taurine. Shitloads. More than you need, unless you're biohacking, which is a different thing altogether. But it just, you'll get more than enough from the animal foods in both the free form, if it's freshly slaughtered, and the stuff that your body can convert. So in particular, your pancreas produces quite a lot. There are other organs, but pancreas quite a lot. I wonder why. And I wonder why I've actually had people that have got kids with type 1 diabetes very young. And I've basically got them on taurine very young. And I'm not saying it's a cure. I can't say that. But miraculously, something positive happened to them. More beta cells and more insulin secretion. Must have been a miracle. I did pray for the kids as well. So, yes. DC, mate, lower your stress and not your cortisol. True. I mean, cortisol goes through circadian rhythms all day, long. And we do. It's used for a lot of other functions in the body. I mean, if you starve yourself or you're hungry, your cortisol levels will go up in order to force more free fatty acids and more. But it comes down pretty fast. It's just a signal, and so it's a bit like insulin has a signaling role. So does cortisol and all that. Stress. When you're stressed, you need more resources. So cortisol goes up in order to provide those resources, those energy resources. It's not, you can't use that association and say cortisol's bad, because that's what they're doing. It's reductionism, and it's just ridiculous, because cortisol, as you said, is used for a whole lot of other functions in the body. But it's also used to say, this body needs more energy and resources to function. Well, when you're under stress, you need more glucose and you need more fatty acids. So that signaling comes out, obviously. I mean, it's a ridiculous argument, even just because it's associated with a specific, people starving themselves or whatever, and then have elevated. Well, because that's going to be the response. It's just logical. Hormones will respond to what happens, but they, like insulin, can be used for a lot of different other functions in the body. One of them is to store excess food energy, in a sense. Voila. What of it? Is it that's the only role? It's just a ridiculous argument. Yes, thanks for pointing that out, DC, and giving me the opportunity to vent a bit. Is it the same as iron from plants or fortified foods? The non-heme tends to be, because they're usually extracted from plant fibers, and then that's how they sell it in that regard. But the problem is with like with any fortification or stuff like that, you're not getting it in the food matrix, so you're not going to get all the other ions as well. And that can actually, it's like giving excess of something in the body, can throw other things out slightly. And that's why people on sad diets that are with fortified shit tend to have problems. Now, some fortification, that is done properly in some countries because you're not going to get people, the majority of people, they're so brainwashed on a carnivore diet, but some countries actually have lower ranges, so they don't end up creating these problems for people. So at least they're getting something, where normally from the void processed food they'd be getting nothing. But that's not a solution to these problems. Anyway, thoughts on NAC on biofilm disruptor for bacterial overgrowth. Well, it's been shown in petri dishes to have those sort of properties, but has a whole lot of other roles in improves lung function, breaks down the mucus, stuff like that. But I wouldn't use excessive, because it's like a double-edged sword. In excess can break it down too much mucus, which isn't a good thing as well. So you don't want to go over 1 gram. Oh, sorry, what is it? yeah. You don't want to go over that, because then you're going to have problems. Often zonulin is used as a marker for leaky gut. Yeah, it's usually people that are either celiacs, that are gluten sensitive, have these sort of problems. This is usually one of the tests in order to markers that they test for. And then if they notice sort of elevated, then they'll look into like celiacs and, genetics and stuff like that. Yes, you can. Anything that, anything that switches things from, the sympathetic to the parasympathetic and all that is going to have a positive effect. Grounding as well, just relaxing out in nature as well. So all these sort of things are helpful. So I sometimes use breath work myself. Personally, I don't do videos or promote it, but I use it for myself, and encourage some of my friends as well. As I, occasionally on live streams, I talk about, grounding, but I haven't done any videos on grounding in that regard. I think Bart has, and that's why I couldn't be bothered. I said most of my subscribers subscribe to him so they can view that video. I want to touch on new stuff that hasn't been covered by others. And that's what I do, or controversies, to sort of discuss about controversies in the carnivore community or just the general world. But that's, I'd encourage that, especially people that may be suffering a lot of stress. It's a good thing. But even if you just want to biohack yourself, improving your breathing is going to basically improve your sleep. So it's going to help you in many different ways. So, but it's like with a lot of things, circadian rhythms, avoiding too much blue light, all these sort of things are going to help in better regulating our bodies and getting them to function better. Anyway, what could it be if a small amount of fiber, especially soluble fiber, provides relief from diarrhea, and that comes and goes in someone that has been carnivore for years? I mean, look, there's going to be a lot of reasons why. I think the biggest problem is, yes, fiber can because it actually can't. Too much fiber can constipate you and create, a lot of other problems. Because it's got little hooks that can, especially if it's raw and it hasn't been cooked, to break down a lot of those hooks. They'll tear inside your gut, so not a good thing. But what we need to be careful with is that people need to have adapted properly. I know that Bart does consultancies to help people out with adaptation, in that regard. But sometimes reintroducing some plants for a short period of time and working out what is it that's driving it, because sometimes it can be that I've found in most people is a disrupted microbiome. I'll give you an example. You get COVID, and what does it do? It can actually reduce, it depends on the people. Some people get a bit of an assault on their immune system, but not a big assault. And remember, part of your immune system is in your gut, and they don't get a lot of problems. Others can get severe depletion of, bifidobacteria primarily, but also lactobacillus. The unfortunate ones that get lactobacillus all of a sudden go, I'm lactose intolerant. No, you're not. You just lost most of your lactobacillus. Or others that get, a lot of us that get loss of bifidobacteria. Well, guess what foods increase bifidobacteria, which is considered the very important stuff? Proteins, animal foods. So if you lose a lot of your bifidobacteria, you're going to have some issues with digestion as well. And so any proteins that get into the gut are going to be a problem. So these are the sort of things. Sort of also, some people have difficulties with some types of fats, in particular, fats that have been a bit more processed. So I know that some people can get a bit of a upset from tallow or from, rather than the fat on the actual meat. These are sort of issues that can happen with things like ghee and stuff like that. It's a matter of just playing around with some of these sort of things and working out what it is. But if you went straight into something and you didn't adapt properly, that can be a problem. It can persist for a long period of time. Generally speaking, if as a short solution, using a bit of fiber isn't going to be the end of the universe or end of the world. I mean, it's not necessary, but if it can be helpful for binding a bit, consuming a bit more dairy can also have a binding effect. Can reduce, so too much dairy can also, in some people, if they don't have a good microbiome, can also cause constipation. So it's the complete opposite, and if some people consume a lot of dairy and vitamin D at the same time, they can, and especially if they've got sort of disrupted microbiome, that can actually cause a slowing down of motility and holding more of the stool and slowing it down. So that can also happen as a consequence. So there's a lot of different things, and some people can need more, like me. So I don't get that problem. So I when I do consume more, I absorb more because of my genetics, and I need it. I'm one of those 24% of people. Not having enough, I'll start getting tachycardia and all sorts of things. So my requirements for dairy are much higher than other people. So there's a lot of variations out there due to genetics and many other things. So it's, you can investigate the genetic side if you want to. I would if I was myself, which I have done if I was you. But yeah. But any refinements to fats will have, some people have greater difficulty than others. So there's all these factors. Is that the friend of yours that you mentioned to me a while ago? Anyway, what you're eating currently. No, sounds okay. Eating a lot of mince. Okay. I'd be eating some meats personally. But anyway. Anything I should focus on? Lost the taste for fish, maybe on Friday occasionally, but I prefer to fast. I mean, if you want to fast, you can fast. It's strange with me and seafood. I sometimes will consume for a period of time, and then others, then I'll go, oh, enough, so I tend to have this, I just listen to my body. Sometimes I feel if I've had consumed too much fish for a period of time, I really don't feel like fish at all. And I may stop it for a large period of time. And then a couple of months later, I'm craving for the damn stuff, and I'm down there eating oysters and buying fish and cooking it nearly on a daily basis, and then I get sick of it again. So obviously I need some certain nutrients the body wants, and it's making me do those sort of things. Listen to your body, and so don't really worry. If your body's telling you, I don't really feel like fish, it means I've had enough, so just don't. Some people claim that pork is problematic. Oh, look, people claim all sorts of things due to parasites, even when it is cooked. It's not. I can't have an argument with people. People's opinions are people's opinions. Yes, there are, in some parts of the world, there are more parasitic problems than other parts of the world. That's true. But if you cook the meat right through, it kills the parasites. They're not, super parasites. These parasites basically cannot withstand high heat. They're not basically, Superman, super parasites. Yeah, ridiculous. Undercooking foods that have got parasites in them, and you'll see the parasites because they'll actually break the flesh and they'll be wiggly, or there'll be holes in the actual meat itself. It's really hard to miss parasites in pork, but trust me on that. It's really hard. If there's parasites in pork, you'll see them. The little white things, you'll see them. It's really difficult to miss them. And if you cook them properly, it's not going to be I'd cook it far more. If it had parasites, I wouldn't throw the meat out. I'd still eat it. And there's proteins in the parasites as well. But if it's a meat, but I'd rather purchase something which doesn't have parasites. Obviously, that'd be a better thing. But people just over-exaggerate, make these claims and over-exaggerate things. Populations have been consuming parasitic pork for a very long time. There are populations like the Titsmani, TS, sort of, my dyslexia. So Titsmani, something like that they're called, and other populations in Asia and all that have consumed pork that's had that effect, and hadn't had the problems. What they do notice in those populations that do get exposed to parasitic stuff is their LDL-C goes really down because it's used by the immune system to combat these. That's one thing that they noticed in the Titsmani. It was actually the parasites, and the researchers were going, we don't really know these people are eating a lot of meat and they got really low LDL. I said, have you checked their parasitic levels? I wonder some of these academics, do they really engage their mind in, being able to see outside the box? Or do they have this narrow tunnel vision? It seems like it. Probably all the reductionist research that they've done all their life, that they have that mindset. Yes, maybe they, as I've said, everybody should do an engineering qualification before they do any other science, in order to have a systems approach to looking at things. Yes, like the physiology of humans and other critters. Yes. So look, I wouldn't worry. Cook it right through. Parasitic meat is obvious. If you look closely at meat, you'll see any parasites. So then it's a question of whether you want to cook it far more to be guaranteed that they'll be killed or not, or whether you want some critters inside you. I'll leave that up to you, Johnny. What nutrients help your body with cellular cleanup? Arginine, anything else? Well, I still haven't made that video, have I? There is a way of actually, which affects two enzymes in the body, which is Capta 1 and Capta 2, and where you can actually influence these organelles that are inside the cell that actually do a lot of cellular cleanup. And when you wake up in the morning, like really early in the morning, like I did today, I put, because it is a bit, leucine is a bit like chalky, a bit powdery. So a bit of warm water, threw in the actual 3 grams of citrulline, slightly less than 1 gram, about like 0.9. If you're a really big person, probably 1.1 grams or 1 gram. But I'm slightly smaller in size. I'm not like, Sean Baker. So I go like 0.9, 0.8, slightly less. And I put that in, mix it up, and that affects these pathways. And so it enhances this cellular cleanup up to about 30-odd%. So it's a biohack that you can actually do in that regard. So you can combine the two. And I mean, you can use arginine as well. I just find the problem with arginine is that, and they did use it in the research, but the problem with arginine is that a lot of it gets, the liver's a bit of a hog and can take a lot of it sometimes, depending. You can have this variability with arginine, where with at least citrulline, it'll go to the kidneys, get converted to arginine, it'll just spread throughout the whole body. So I'm going to get more tissue by going down the citrulline pathway rather than the arginine pathway, is what I'm saying, that combo. So that's a nice little biohack to do early in the morning, before you have your first meal about 10:30, 11, so to speak, because that's when your cortisol is going to be the lowest. And usually most people that worked outdoors or on the land and all that, they woke up very early, went down to the farmland, which was cool and not too hot, and worked into the later mornings. I've worked on the farm. And then you go back home and have your first meal, the break of fast, breakfast. Got it? So that will give you plenty of time to get that improvement, or that you could say, what happened? Oops, I just missed a couple of questions. What is your view of binders, Harry? Some people think that consuming cooked vegetables is a much to bind toxin, bile, and gut toxins. I mean, there are a lot of different binders out there. There's like, sort of charcoal type binders and things like that. I find that if you've got like a disrupted microbiome, the best binder is deglutarate. What is it called? Having a mind block at the moment. Calcium deglutarate, that's it. So calcium deglutarate prevents the breakup of things being released from the bile. And it guarantees 100% that it'll actually get out of the colon into the toilet. So calcium deglutarate is a real, I know people use it to detox estrogen or xenoestrogens in that regard, but also it helps in the gut to minimize reabsorption of any toxins and stuff like that if you've got certain problems with your gut microbiome. So that's because normally healthy individuals shouldn't have a problem, but if they do have a problem for whatever reason, then calcium deglutarate can guarantee that this won't happen. Far better than any plants or whatever else, because it's nothing to do with the plants, more to do with the actual bile mixture not breaking up and parts of it getting reabsorbed. Take parasitic stuff. Are you being a comedian, Lukey? Oh, what's happened, mate? Adrian, how are you, mate? Hi, Harry. Good to see you back on the live stream. Yeah, look, I had to do Friday. So couldn't really do it on this Sunday. And I'd actually promised it, and I go, so I had to find another day. So I took a flex day. I had heaps of flex anyway. I'm still going to be, by the end of this month, I'll have to take another day off because I'll have too many hours. So I've got plenty of hours in that regard. So I said, on Monday, I thought about it, and I go, okay, we'll take Friday because and if my other plans don't happen, then I can always switch to Sunday. But, so yes. What do we need to repair mitochondria properly in cancer states? Low deuterium approach alone isn't enough. What else? Well, low deuterium or deuterium depletion isn't going to actually, it will reduce the problem because deuterium depleted water can dilute. Fat has also a diluting effect in that regard because it's lower deuterium as well. Not as low as low deuterium water, which is specifically designed to dilute the deuterium levels in the body. So it has a benefit, but the problem is that it's not repairing the problem. Okay? So it's not enough to do that. Obviously, you can do a lot of things. You can do breath work, which helps improve your cellular function. You can do that previous biohack that I mentioned of the citrulline and small amounts of leucine. Okay, less than a gram or less, depending on your size. And having that very early in the morning, and that helps with cellular cleanup as well. So that can be helpful. The other thing is, I've got a whole playlist. You can go and take a look on senolytics and how to use them at night to amplify the apoptosis of both senescent damaged cells and cancer cells. So that can be very useful as well, to look at senolytics of killing off cancer cells. Taurine can also, in the evenings, I tend to say to cancer people, where I may have a half and half in the morning because it calms me through the day, because it improves GABA function, but also at night it improves melatonin production, but also having all these sort of glasses that reduce blue light will mean I'll have more melatonin at night. And melatonin can help with mitochondrial damage as well. Plus, taurine also has reducing oxidative stress and stuff like that, also causing apoptosis in certain cancer lines. Fasting also can be very helpful as well. It depends at what stage you are, whether you're metastatic or not, stuff like that. There's a whole lot of things. People that want to go down the pathway of the conventional way, as an example, before you go into chemo or into radiation therapy, protect your normal cells. How do you protect your normal cells? By megadosing on taurine. That means you have to get yourself where your body, because some people can be more sulfur sensitive than others, you need to build up your levels up to 20. So by the time you're going in, you can actually reduce the oxidative stress on the normal cells so they don't get damaged. And what it actually does is it's called what is called chemoresistance. Taurine has been shown in studies to overcome chemoresistance. So you can do it for longer with less side effects. So there's those sort of things. If you go down the medicalized pathway, as an example, I think senolytics are really important in killing off, those sort of cells, keeping lower the level of glucose in the system is very important. So you have to be a bit more stricter in your dietary approach. I would not bother with glutamate. I know that, normal cells and cancer cells use glutamate, yes, but so does the immune system. And the immune system, you have to boost your immune system. So I would take a peptide called TA1 peptide, T, the word A1. I can't pronounce the M word, so I just use the acronym. But if you type it in, you'll find the actual name. It's a bit of a tongue twister for a person like me with dyslexia. So you can use that to boost your immune system. Vitamin D status, extremely important. Is your vitamin C in the top, above the normal range, in the therapeutic range? We're not talking about toxic levels, but between the top of the normal and the toxic level, there's that therapeutic range, which is good for cardiovascular and cancer. Are you in that level? If not, why not? Because you need vitamin D for new immune stem cells. And if you don't have them, you're going to have a problem in fighting cancer. You also need taurine in your system. Guess what taurine does? It prevents immunosenescence. That means when your immune system goes and does the fight, it gets weakened. Well, taurine prevents that. It also activates those T cells, the ones that actually, the natural killer cells, in your thymus and all that. It also prevents remodeling of your thymus, not only your heart, but also your thymus, which means that your thymus doesn't shrink as you get older. Very important, because an important part of your immune system is related to the thymus. So all these sort of things you can do to improve your outcome. It's not a one thing, it's multiple things and all that. So more animal-based diet will actually improve your mitochondria. Periodic fasting will force the cleanup of old, damaged mitochondria. So all these things are part of a strategy. Excessive of anything can be deleterious to the body. It's using these things in a smart, strategic way. There's a lot in my cancer playlist covering some of these things. And on the clip channel, if you Google that clip channel and go through, there's a number of things that I've spoken on my live streams and given a few other pointers in regards to this subject matter. So go and check those out. You don't need to lower cholesterol. Remember, cholesterol is a waxy material, okay? We have, and it gets transported like, anything that's fat soluble, like fats, the fat soluble vitamins, cholesterol, which is a sort of a waxy alcohol type thing. All these sort of things get transported in lipoproteins. You got LDL, HDL, chylomicrons, VLDL, all these. Why is LDL bad? It's just another truck. It's like saying that truck is bad, but that Mercedes, that Volvo, and all that, those trucks are fine. They're all trucks carrying the same shit. Why is that truck? It's just nonsense. LDL-C is used by the immune system, has more concentrated cholesterol than the others because the others got triglycerides and all that and are bigger in size. So by the time all those other ones shrink, like chylomicrons will drop off stuff, they'll shrink and shrink and shrink. They become remnants. They go into the liver. They get repackaged out with triglycerides and fat-soluble vitamins and whatever else the body needs, and they get sent through circulation as VLDLs. Then they shrink as they go into cells, provide the material that they need, and they shrink to IDLs, intermediate dense lipoproteins, and then eventually they get to low density lipoproteins and different fractions of that. So LDL is just a carrier. The cholesterol that was carried from the gut all the way through all these pathways, all these trucks, carriers, transporters. Why is the last transporter the problem? All the other transporters are not. It's just nonsense. This is associated nonsense. And why is it associated? Guess what? Guess what's associated with fires? With every single bushfire, guess what's associated? Firemen. Every single bushfire. Those firemen really must be bad. They must be causing these fires. Really? What does LDL-C do? Isn't it involved with the immune system? So why would you think if you're inflamed and if you've got, remember that I said the parasites about the Titsamani people in the Amazon, how their LDL levels because of parasites drops really low? Why? Because the immune system's using it. That's why. So obviously, if there's a health problem in the body, what do you think's going to be there? LDL-C. Oh, there's that fireman. He must be that evil fireman that's here lighting this fire. He's got a hose trying to douse and get rid of the problem. And even a modified version, Lp(a) of cholesterol, does a lot of the stitching up, of when endothelial cells, the layers like aldehydes come through and rip lipid membranes because you just had a bit of seed oil. And now that those bilayers are being damaged in the endothelium. So along comes Lp(a). So uric acid reduces the inflammation in the locality, and Lp(a) starts stitching it all together and all the fibrin and all the other stuff to try and actually heal it and hold it all together. Well, that's what's happening. Obviously, it's going to be there. So is it the evil culprit or is it trying to repair? And then I have another meal with a whole lot of seed oil and I do more damage to the same location. And obviously, Lp(a) and all these other mechanisms will rush into the area where it's been assaulted and damaged. Aren't they so evil that they turn up to heal and do some repair? It's just nonsense. It's an association. This is such a crackpot idea. It's great for the statin industry because they make a shitload of money, but they don't fix the problem. Do you know what actually helps from statins? Well, it creates a whole lot of side effects in the body. It does two things. One, it poorly does inflammation. There are many other things that can lower inflammation compared to statins. So it's not, but has a small anti-inflammatory effect. But you know what the biggest effect and benefit that it has? It causes calcification of the arteries. So if you've got a whole lot of soft plaque, guess what it's going to do to that soft plaque? It's going to calcify it and stabilize that atheroma. Now, do you understand where the benefit's coming from? I'm drying out. Warm in here. Anyway, well, struggling. I need to basically, that's the thing. I need a fan in here. I usually have a fan when it's summer. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah, that's really, it's nonsense. Anyway, have you looked at much at anti-cardiolipin antibodies? Any thoughts on what to do if you have low levels of these? Look, I haven't looked into it, Adrian. Not at all. So I can't give you a definitive answer on that. I'm aware, but I haven't really looked into it. So if I haven't looked into something comprehensively from all angles, and looked at it carefully, because sometimes there are opinions that people have that are wrong, I can't give you an answer on that. So where's your Q? You need to put a Q in front of it. What aspect of the nutritional lifestyle can we focus on to prevent graying hairs? Biotin is really important. Copper is an important mineral. Certain modern people, because we're stressed, we can deplete copper. So, we can get it from crustaceans. We can get it from organ meats as well, but crustaceans are pretty good without having too much excessive. So actually putting some organ meats in is a pretty good idea. Eggs to get biotin. Both you'll find it in other animal foods as well in varying quantities. So you sort of just have to look into that. What's the trying to remember that site. Let me just find the site for you. And found the link, but it has of the other one. Yes, they do have vitamin B. Good. I know that eggs are a really good source. Like you can have one egg and you can get quite a bit. A couple of eggs and you can pretty much get your daily dose. Okay, so I'll stick that in the comments area. So go. So that, pretty much, those two are very important. Biotin is really, really important in that regard. Getting enough protein and also sulfur. So things like MSM can be really useful for strong hair, but also providing that sulfur to grow, to get rid of the older hair in that regard. I mean, taurine does play a bit of a role, but MSM seems to be much better as a supplement for that purpose. What are your thoughts on fungal infections? Like any infection, apparently fungal infections can lead to GI problems and elevated cholesterol. Well, I wouldn't worry about cholesterol. Get your mind out of that. Elevated cholesterol, because any infection is going to basically elevate your cholesterol because it needs to be used by the immune system. So the body starts producing in the liver more cholesterol to provide to the immune system to do its function, to fight off the different infections. So, whenever you get any disease, your LDL goes up and then comes down as it's being used by. So if you take measurements between the point of being infected to the point of being healed, you'll see this sort of effect. So I wouldn't be too. I do have some videos on parasites and stuff like that. Go and check them out. What I say, did you see Dr. Shafee's lecture on autoimmune? No, I haven't. So I can't comment on something that I haven't seen. He proposes that it's not possible for our bodies to make cells that attack our own cells, and that toxins that are stored at the site of is the issue. Yeah, look, I haven't seen it. I'd have to basically, for me to comment on somebody, Johnny, I have to see what they actually said. I'm not saying you're lying, but you may have misunderstood something. So I need to actually hear exactly what they said. But obviously, a leaky gut that allows foreign proteins to come in is going to have some reactivity with the immune system, and things can, toxins and certain other things can stick because of the sort of electrostatic effect. They can actually stick and adhere to different tissues and locations in the body, and that can also generate a certain level of immune response to those locations. So, obviously, if you're people that are gluten sensitive are going to be far more susceptible to, if they eat that and damage their gut lining, they're going to be far more susceptible to, autoimmune issues. Eating a species appropriate diet is going to have far more, you're going to get more taurine in your system. That means that the taurine is going to regulate. I've done a video, a metabolite that, that regulates the microbiome, or that something along those lines that's important for the microbiome. It's in the digestive issues playlist, and I cover how taurine regulates different, like histamines and spermidine, a whole lot of other things inside the gut to make things work properly. So a species appropriate diet will give you more of that. That's why, animals like cats and all that can't synthesize, or very tiny, they require it from the raw meat, fresh raw meat, or supplemental. Like I get Dad to give his cat, and she's a strong cat. Yes. So, I mean, ultimately, Dr. Shafee is a pretty cluey guy, and I'd have to say that a species inappropriate diet, I'd have to agree with him on that, is going to really cause far more derangements and compromise the gut lining in particular. And when you compromise the gut lining for whatever causes that compromising of the gut lining is going to, create immune responses in the gut, and it's going to create immune responses in the body. This is why a lot of autoimmune things exist in the gut. It's not accidental. It's because you're really eating inappropriately and you're creating a lot of gut inflammation, because a large part of your immune system is in the gut. Why? Because it's at all the mucosal layers, nose, mouth, your tonsils, part of your immune system, all the mucosal layers, your anus, your penis, your vagina area, all these sort of things are part of the frontline defenses. That's the areas that anything from outside comes in most easily. And so that's where you're going to have large parts of your immune system protecting those mucosal layers to stop the intruders. Yes. I have been called a germ. We're just trying to probe. Thoughts on life, space, broad spectrum, probiotic advanced. You get this Chemist Warehouse, Australia. Do you think it's a good probiotic? I don't know. Some people say that it's fairly good. Some people say that it's not as good. It's really hard to say. Now, obviously, if you're using this sort of stuff, I'd be using it on an empty stomach. Very early in the day when I woke up, a bit like you do with enzymes, the capsules for enzymes. You don't want a lot of stomach acidity and all that. You want it to go right through and get to the colon. So if you're going to have it, you should basically, the moment you wake up, have it then. Most people don't. They have it at different times in the day and later. And it may be because your circadian rhythms, by a certain point in the day, in the early day, your actual stomach acidity, even though you may not have any food, starts going up in anticipation of food coming in. So when you wake up and you're still a bit groggy, that's the point that your stomach acidity is going to be the lowest until you get the dawn effect and you get cortisol spiking and sort of getting you up and all that. So if I'm going to have something like that, I'm going to have it whenever I've had probiotic type supplements, I've always had it straight at the moment that I wake up. Things like lubrikinase or nattokinase or stuff like that, same time, just when I've woken up. I want it to run right through and get to the colon. I don't want it being degraded too much in the stomach. And so that's the and so maybe people are having it at the wrong time. And that's the reason why people are having a different effect. So when they go and do a test, because I've actually heard people that have done, I've sort of Googled a bit and actually have come across where people have used this. They've used it very early in the morning and their levels are not too bad. And others that have used it different times in the day and their levels are atrocious. And they say, oh, this doesn't work. Well, if you're having it any other time in the day, then you'll have to get one which is in an enteric capsule. An enteric capsule will guarantee that acidity won't damage it. That will get right through. So, but that costs more. So it's a question of cost benefit, time taken, things like that. So if you're going to take it, any supplement of those types, like proteolytic enzymes and things like, unless it's proteolytic enzymes for digestion, that's a different thing, so that comes a few hours after you've already eaten. So that's a bit different. But if you're doing any other type probiotics, enzymes, you want to really take them very, very early before you've actually got a lot of digestive activity, so to speak. Anyway, after a stroke event, do you recommend cereal stem cell as a primary way of repairing the brain damage? Maybe taurine less important? No, taurine is actually more important than cereal. Cereal basically just gives you new cells throughout the body. So it may not go necessarily to the brain. Obviously, if you've got damage, though, most of the actual stem cells will be prioritized for the brain. That's where Cerule can be useful. But what taurine does is does two things in the brain. Doesn't do it in the peripheral tissue in terms of stem cells, but in the brain, it actually encourages the brain itself to produce more stem cells. So new brain tissue. It doesn't do it anywhere else. So it's not a replacement for Cerule in the rest of your body. Just in the brain, taurine can actually, and I would be mega dosing, depending on your tolerance, starting low and then building up, because also what it does is it actually suppresses the oxidative stress damage. They've used it in many studies. In the past, some hospitals, not all hospitals, unfortunately, and I think it's, scandalous that it still happens, but some hospitals that are aware of the use of taurine, they intravenously use taurine on people that basically have had a stroke or had a heart attack. Why? Because the thing that actually causes the most of the damage isn't the initial stroke or the heart attack. It's actually the red blood perfusion. When blood comes back rushing into that tissue and brings a whole lot of oxygen, and you've had a lot of free electrons because of the oxidative damage that's actually caused, it actually enhances that oxidative damage. And so what taurine does is suppress that oxidative damage that happens from red blood perfusion, and also helps with remodeling both brain and heart, prevents it from and breaks down fibrosis as well, and has a benefit in the brain. So in terms of new stem cells, but also cleaning up a lot of the glycation and oxidative stress that's in the brain. So it is really important. Also, obviously, species appropriate diet with a lot of phospholipids and many other things like that, choline and things like that, very important for phosphatidylserine and phosphatidylcholine. So that's important to get that sort of stuff in as well. Eggs are a very good source of choline. So extra eggs are recommended from your mate Harry. So plus, building up. Don't go straight into mega dosing. Build up slowly until you get your levels up in order to get the benefit and also not get a lot of the side effects, because your body has to sort of adapt. So go into 1 gram, then build it up 2, 3, next day a bit more, next day a bit more. See how you tolerate it. Some people tend to be, how can I put it, a bit more sulfur sensitive, so they have to go slower until they can actually overcome that sulfur sensitivity. Yep, it's fine. Yeah, it's good for that purpose and all that, but you'll get plenty if you eat animal foods. Certain animal foods like that have got connective tissue will have more, and eggs will have more, things like that. So if you eat those, if you're eating sufficient animal foods, you don't need a supplement. But if you want to do short-term supplementation because you're transitioning from a different diet now into a carnivore diet, and you've still got some underlying issues, permeability and stuff like that, yeah, taking a bit extra as a supplement is fine as a short-term thing. But your diet will eventually should be furnishing you enough in that regard. Any thoughts on recent announcements by Trump that are cautioning against Tylenol? Well, the advantage is that a lot of Democrats are going to take it and actually cause themselves more side effects. So that's probably the only positive thing that's come out of it that I can say is my obvious humor. Yeah, because I actually have heard a number of Democrats on not the reasonable ones, but the more radical ones, the crazies that are on social media, particular TikTok and places like that. Yeah, they're actually saying we're going to consume more. All these sort of things have side effects of varying side effects. Anybody can Google and see all the side effects. I'm not going to go through them now because I can't remember them all. But they have side effects, like a lot of paracetamols and many other things. Consuming them for too long is a problem, so causes a lot of disruption in the body, countless things. Unfortunately, because we haven't done any real studies, we know of the side effects, but we can't say definitively. And that's why I'm not, because people would say, oh, you're making claims. Well, we know there are side effects. They vary between people, maybe for genetics, many other reasons, or the dose. Good luck. It's something that I wouldn't take these things. It's not as if our ancestors ever took these sort of things. Yes, but there's plenty of research that's showing side effects, and they're just basically saying, well, we've looked at this literature. It's probably RFK looked at it and goes, why aren't we actioning this? Oh, that's right. The pharmaceutical industry doesn't want us to action that. So he probably went to Trump and said, look what I discovered. A whole lot of side effects with a lot of these sort of medications. And it's just another one of those things that he's pointing out, because remember, he can't take any action. Only he works for the president. All he can do is go to the president, bring it to his attention, and then convince the president to sign something, to make an announcement. Because in the end, like all the secretaries of the different departments, they work for them for Trump. Okay? Because that's how the Constitution works in America. Okay? In other countries like Westminster system, like the British thing, you've got the leader of the government, but also you've got the different ministers that are responsible. When they're elected politicians, the secretaries of the different departments, they're not elected. They're appointed. Different. So they have less power. They have to get the approval of the president before they can proceed. So they have to convince Trump, basically. I think out of all the actual secretaries, I would say that RFK Jr. is probably doing the best job out of all of them, particular for the American people and also for a lot of other people. I mean, he's aware of respiratory infections and antigen sin. We've known for it all the way back in the 60s when they did the studies. This is not new stuff. Antigen sin is a real thing. So when you take a jab and these things mutate, well, guess what happens? Now those antibodies are looking for the wrong thing. It's called the antigen sin. It's sinful because it's actually undermined, because the natural killer cells are, the ones that actually are ready to pounce on anything new. But if you basically deceive the system to think this is it, so anything that has some similarity, this is how I respond, now you've suppressed the immune response. And that's the problem with flu and C19. Got it? It has that antigen sin effect. And so we want to boost with species appropriate diet and maintaining good vitamin D levels, maintain good natural killer cells, T cells, that are going to go after and exterminate anything coming through. Got it? That's how the immune system, its T cell vigilante, comes out with a big a big club to club any virus, knock it for 6. I always wanted to do that. Yes, the child in me hasn't died. Harry, do you take vitamin C? No. I'm not going to recommend it because I'm against it. Practically. As I said before, we get more than enough in dehydroascorbic acid inside the flesh of animals. We don't need it. And the body takes that and stores it. So there is no requirements. I've actually just explained it earlier. If you haven't seen it, you'll have to see it earlier. There is no requirement. Pine needles. God. Oh, you guys. The sort of stuff you guys consume, I scratch my head. Harry, what's your opinion on the talk I have seen more recently about cognitive benefits of creatine? It does have cognitive benefits. I've got Dad on it. So he takes early in the morning, the best time, because it can disrupt your circadian rhythms. The best time is to take it very early in the morning. And so before Dad's meal, his first meal, I get him to take it then. So I get him to, because he has like a glass of warm water with lemon juice, and that is going to dilute it much better. So that's what he puts his 5 grams in and dilutes it, and then it's easier to drink. He drinks it slowly. He's an old fella, 90 years old. So, so yes, it does have benefits it gives you, and also because you're getting that extra energy, just think about it. I'm getting that in here, this thing, I'm getting that extra energy, phosphocreatine in the body, and it's going to basically the machinery, the energy machinery in the body is going to work much better. But I don't want it at night. I don't want to be, fully energized. I want my melatonin to be putting me to sleep. Got it? So that's why you don't take it at night. You take it early in the morning, and you have more both benefits and energy benefits because it enhances the energy systems. And the old boy does need it at 90. Maybe in cancer, strengthening the immune system is the best approach to reverse cancer rather than focusing on chemotherapy to kill cancer cells. I would agree with that, but I can't actually say that. I would personally do that, but I can't say that. You understand? Strong immune system will naturally kill cancer cells. Exactly. Strengthen the immune system, get better approach. And use senolytics in a strategic way to kill off a lot of these, force them to die, because there are things in the body or things that we consume or a whole lot of other processes that can actually have tumor suppressive effects, and there are things that can have tumor promoting effects. Certain things will have upregulate, like taurine will upregulate the tumor suppressive, and certain things will do the complete opposite, especially glucose and elevated insulin. So that's why it's important to lower that signaling while at the same time boosting the immune system and all that to kill off the sort of stuff. So that's the reason why I usually say to people, go and check my cancer playlist. There's a lot of information. You can learn a lot of things about how it works and how to combat it. Okay. Best approach is threefold: restoring mitochondrial, starving cancer cells, and boosting the immune. Yeah. And there are a number of ways to do that. Also with some people you need to sort of look at what's happening in your body. Albumin levels may drop. So supplementing our albumin levels is a good thing. You can get it on Amazon, albumin. So if your albumin levels are slightly lower and you're cancer, that's a risk. You need to mitigate that. And you know what? If you go to a doctor and tell him my albumin levels are low, until they get really dangerously low, they won't give you anything. You have to be in the hospital before you get any intravenous, and by then it could be too late, or you may not make it there, and that can have an effect on your heart basically going, it's over, Red Rover. Bob, hey, Harry is back. But I finally missed you, Ton Man. Hope you are doing great. Yep, I am. Yep, no, I'm fine. The rest of my families has their issues. My sister, oh God, she fell down some stairs. Her husband's been in hospital for other issues. Dad's had his issues and operations and stuff like that on his eyes and cataracts and other things, and sorting out things at his home and buying him stuff and getting him stuff. I have to go over on Sunday, do a couple of things as well at his place. So yeah, it's never ending. Other responsibilities, work related or as well. So yeah, it's plenty of other things, and entertaining some of my friends. So it was, yeah, because I got other things, I sort of go, okay, I've got plenty of hours. I'll flex off on Friday, so I basically just set my manager basically saying, well, got plenty of hours. Can you put me down for Friday? She said, fine, not a problem. So she approved it, and I've got the day off. And I decided to do a live stream too, the morning one and then the afternoon one. So, yes, good to see you, mate. Do you remember the live stream you did where you said our jaws are smaller because not eating enough fat? What's the mechanism behind that? The fat soluble vitamins. Remember, the vitamin K is very important as well, but also your bones require fat soluble vitamins as well. So your bone health, and also B12 is important for bone health. But the actual remodeling of bones, because remember your tooth, your jaw, they're all bony material, bony stuff. And they do require these nutrients in order to, that's why vegans are basically, if you look at anyone, I look up some of my old photos and old images where I was more not eating a lot of animal foods, and my face was more narrower, sort of seemed longer and narrower, where now it's sort of more rounded, more larger than what it used to be. So again, when you're eating a species appropriate diet, you're providing the material to basically get that. And obviously fat is important, and so are proteins, both are, and the different vitamins and minerals that are involved. But there was another thing that I would have said in that, is that in order to get that happening, you need to chew. Very important that we chew our meat. Take it slower, guys. It's not the 100-meter sprint race. How quickly can I shove down the food? Actually, by chewing it, you're actually breaking it down and pre-digesting it before it gets to the stomach, which actually makes it easier, especially as you get older. So that's what we need to do. So I would have talked about, all these different requirements and nutrients, but it's probably because sometimes people on a carnivore diet don't consume enough fat. And they go, well, why isn't my body? Well, because you just don't need protein. Protein alone isn't enough. You need the vitamins, the fat-soluble vitamins. and the minerals and all those things to combine together to basically for the bone matrix that gets remodeled. And if you don't have those nutrients, it just doesn't happen. Plus, you need the mechanical, like lifting weights builds muscles and creates bone density by gravity and all that. Well, the jaw, munching down on things, also improves and strengthens the jaw, and also the connective tissue that control the jaw as well. Very important. Am I correct in thinking that constipation and lactose comes from lactose in the colon? Flatulence. When it comes to constipation and diarrhea and all the other sort of stuff, it can be a whole lot of different things. One thing that I have noticed is that if you lose some of the lactobacillus strains, that can be due to if people are eating occasional cheats, plants that have got glyphosate, that have been sprayed by glyphosate. Remember, it is a patented antibiotic, a low-grade antibiotic. So you're actually killing off your gut microbiome. And you need your gut microbiome to basically be able to break down things. And if your gut isn't breaking down things properly, you've got a problem. So there's, I don't do consultancies. I used to, doing work is impossible, and doing consultancies. But you can actually do a consultancy with Bart, and he can go through and you can do some possible tests to see and maybe there's something in your diet. I don't know. It's probably a good thing to go through that pathway, or send me an email. Now, I usually don't. If I tell people, I usually say, don't send me emails because I just don't have the time to read them. But if you send me an email, because I've actually asked you and go through what you're eating, what your tests are and stuff like that, what you've got, and some of your symptoms and combinations and all that, then I'll be able to try and make some sense of it and all that. I have noticed that some people get some relief by doing kefir. It improves their functioning of their gut. And also there is a video that I did ages ago on Metaflora, which is a bacteria strain. It's an E. coli, but not the one that's in the stomach. There's a different strain of E. coli. But what it does is it actually helps improve your gut, and it also helps improve gut motility. That means the movement of stuff, it reduces. It also will give you protection against dysentery and many other waterborne diseases. So it can be beneficial. It comes in an enteric capsule, so it will get into your colon. So check the video on Metaflora. The company is a German company. They extracted this from some veteran of First World War that never got dysentery and survived, and they found that it was due to this bacteria strain. So that's one way of actually dealing with the problem as well. The other problem may be you're consuming far too much dairy, and because you're not absorbing it for whatever reason, not enough magnesium, not enough vitamin D, don't know, just speculating, then if more of it ends up, it can actually slow down the motility if there's more calcium in the actual colon. It's supposed to get into your body. If it's not, and more of it's ending up in your colon, it's going to slow down more motility. So check that out as well. Look, a lot of our guts are, there's more derangements than we've had in the past. So as I said, the bifidobacteria are really very important. So there are many of them out there. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. There's planet, well, whatever. I can't even pronounce the damn names properly. But a number of those, the bifido types, but I just can't remember the exact, because I've got all these numbers, DSM, whatever, and other things like that. So there's a whole lot of different strains that really have a good effect on permeability and actually rebuilding some of the mucosal layer protections and stuff like that. So leave me a link and a comment, and I'll stick later when I get a chance to go through the comments. I'll stick links to specific brands for bifido. What might be the reason behind eating too much protein making me feel like garbage despite eating enough fat? If I go above 100, 130 of protein things such as, hold on. So you're eating protein, but you're not actually breaking it down. Well, it's possibly the most likely culprit there, because remember, when you take in the fats, if you're getting through the bile coming through, which helps with the fats, and also the enzymes that come through, the pancreatic enzymes and all that. But if you're having problems with protein digestion, that seems to be a problem with you're not building up enough stomach acid. Why? H. pylori could be one issue that needs to be investigated. The other thing is, I suspect, because you've been around for a while, if you're taking taurine, that should actually improve the proton pumps. If it's not, because it's being suppressed by excessive H. pylori or some other fungal overgrowth that's preventing the stomach to get to good acidity levels, you can use something like HCl to be able to acidify the stomach more, to help with the digestion until your stomach starts improving its own digestion, its own function, and starts increasing or lowering the pH and increasing the acidity, because that also helps in suppressing. This is the reason why H. pylori tries to suppress acidity, because it survives much better. When there's too much acidity, you get big die-off. So yeah, you have to investigate that, so look into it. Potential benefits of inositol supplements for certain conditions. Yeah, it's good for the brain. So like choline and inositol, just sort of, these are other metabolites as well. So it can be useful in that regard, but you can get it in things like eggs and other animal foods and it can also be synthesized in the body if you give it enough of the animal foods. So do you need a supplement? Unless you're a vegan or vegetarian, maybe, or a sad dieter, but a carnivore, nah, not really. What do you think about the study aluminium in the brain tissue in autism? They finally decided to analyze autistic brain issues and found the highest levels of aluminium. Well, I don't know. Is the answer the proper answer? Because that's an association. We know that people with a lot of brain disorders tend to have elevated levels of a number of different minerals. And we don't know why. Could it be that these things are not being excreted out of the body because it other systems in the body get undermined? Or is it that, these kids cannot, for whatever reason, because they have certain underlying dysfunctions in the body, can't excrete those, and they bioaccumulate? So it may not be, because there are many other processed foods that have aluminium in them, not only. So all that bioaccumulation, because it's not being removed from the body, because a lot of kids with autism also have lower taurine levels and lower bile. And bile excretes a lot of the actual heavy metals. So if your detox pathways and your bile isn't working properly, you can bioaccumulate all sorts of things, aluminium, manganese, and all these other things that are found in kids with brain disorders in higher concentrations, not only aluminium. So it's not merely from here. There's the food supply, many other things. But why is it bioaccumulating? It's not bioaccumulating in the other kids because they've got much lower levels. So they've got the mechanisms to detox. These kids don't have the mechanisms to detox. And so any source is going to be a problem. And so, again, it's an association, but it hasn't proved. And yes, these things are damaging. But again, is it because they can't detox, or because they're actually getting it from that, or from the diet of processed food? So we have to use lateral thinking. It's very easy to jump on and say, oh, there's the culprit. Kill him, hit him, do all that. You have to control emotion. I'm not saying be a robot, but control emotion and think and say, okay, what are the mechanisms? And that is how you make out what's happening. Anyway, so we'll see where it all leads in that regard. But I would say if we investigated, because there's plenty of studies that show kids with autism have lower taurine levels and have more issues with other things and all that sort of stuff in regards to, bile synthesis and other functions in their body. So it's not one derangement, it's many others. And so they may be contributing far more than just the bioaccumulation of these things is a downstream effect of the other problems. Poor detox and poor excretion. So it's a more complex thing. But obviously, you want to definitely take that sort of stuff out of the food supply, and you definitely want to take it out of the jabs as well. That would be a good step in the right direction. Obviously, that would still would mitigate the issue, the issue of autism, but it would probably reduce the severity, and that would be more efficacious to take that stuff out. I also am against the blood type. Anyway, give me a sec. I'm just going to come back. I'll run this and I'll be back.
Or taurine, which is an osmolyte, which regulates all the intra and extracellular fluids and regulates the actual electrolytes. If you've got enough taurine, you're not going to have a magnesium deficiency, and that's eating enough meat. That's what people on a keto diet, on a low meat keto diet, usually have a lot of these electrolyte imbalances, not enough taurine. Especially more sort of lower insulin state, you need taurine to regulate those fluids much better, because it's an osmolyte, so it deals with the electrolytes as well, many other things. But when people up their level of meat consumption, they notice a lot of their so-called electrolyte issues go away. Surprise, surprise. And and make sure you get enough meat or taurine, which is an osmolyte which regulates all the intra and extracellular fluids.
Okay. Can you hear me? Are you able to see me now or not? Okay. Oh, my background is gone as well. Uh, Okay. Back again. Yeah, this is my office and my storage area. So, don't know why that. Anyway. Yeah, I think I covered that pretty much. Anyway, what do you think about raw milk? Yeah, it's fine. It's got a far more benefits for the immune system. If you've got cataracts, is it advisable? Look, Dad changed it because he was nearly blind. But if you use taurine, it can actually has shown to have benefits in reducing that damage. Yes, it does. What do you think about conspiracy theory like flat Earth? It's ridiculous. How about aliens? Ridiculous. How about CIA gateway projects with consciousness, remote viewing, acts, demonic? Finally, secret societies like, yeah, they've been around from very early days. And those secret societies tend to, their leaderships to be demonic. The people below have no idea what they're doing. They're just part of that secret society. But the people at the top, they're the dangerous ones. But the remote, as I said, the remote stuff, yep, that is, they actually did do that, remote viewing. But I believe it's demonic. And the so-called alien stuff is also the same thing, because they're not coming out of space. They're coming out of the noetic realm, the metaphysical realm, so the layer between this reality and the metaphysical reality. So, yeah, so I basically view it in that regard. There are millions and millions of telescopes looking up. Nobody sees them. Only a couple of characters here and there. Why aren't thousands of people seeing them? But some person on a farmland sees them. And if you do a background story on them, you find, oh, okay, they've got an interesting history associated with the intelligence community or associated with certain groups. So are they misdirects or make believe stuff in order to, if you've got problems in society, you want to do two things. One, get people to be concerned about non-real things, like the so-called anthropogenic change to our climate thing, or to get them involved in all these other peripheral things rather than the real problems of society, because they don't want you to focus. Remember how when there was Occupy Wall Street, immediately that whole movement went away and everybody was focused on all these other things that don't threaten the ruling class. Got it? So no, there are plenty of, the flat Earth is nonsense, because there was no NASA back in the antiquity, and my ancestors actually measured from different latitudes. They actually measured the curvature by looking at the shadow that the sun caused. So, and many other techniques that they used, and they were very close to accurately measuring the entire globe in that regard. And most of the things that the celestial bodies that we view out there, what are they? Circular, because it's the way sort of gravity pulls into a central thing. That's why they're like that, and that's why we're like that. And when you go very high up in space, you can see that curvature. And there are many people that have gone up there. They're not all, they're not part of the intelligence community or anything like that. There have been heaps and heaps of people from all walks of life. So no, it's really, the internet has blown that out of proportion. That is an ancient thing that some medieval people believed. And in the modern era, it's just got traction again for whatever reason, because of the internet. Every sort of crazy thing gets a bit of traction. So even if you go back and look at the Old Testament, there's a story of, I can't remember which prophet, was taken up into the heavens by one of the angels and looked back on the earth and saw the earth as a globe, as a rounded thing, and described it as something hanging there, but with no string attached to it, because the human mind that is living in a sort of a very old society that doesn't have a lot of knowledge of science or whatever else, would say, if you're going to hang something like a rounded thing, like a ball or whatever, it's going to be on a string. How is that just hanging there with no string attached to it? That's gravity, but no idea about gravity, because the purpose of wasn't to explain the science, it was to explain God's message and rules of what he expected of humans. So completely different. So people, sometimes the flat earthers, try and go, and those things are describing people's understanding of the earth. And it's not actually saying that the earth is flat. It's actually describing the landmass in the way that they can visually see it. So remember, it's interpretation. It's not basically, God's purpose wasn't to basically explain science. It was to basically tell people what he expected of them and all that, in order to be saved, so to speak. But people make up stories, all sorts of things, because they find little strings that can be attached. Ignore the rest that invalidates that interpretation, and then just go with that. And that's the problem with a lot of people. It's the same reductionist nonsense we get in science. It's a human problem that we have a tendency to find something and focus on it narrowly and make it our new religion, ideology, whatever. It's a very dangerous mindset, but the majority of humanity has that mindset because it's simplification. Complexity is difficult for all humans. You have to fight against the mind wanting to simplify the message, simplify everything, so you can make sense of the world. But that's when you get into trouble. So some of us have the ability to fight against that underlying biological need to simplify things, to make sense of things around us. Others allow themselves emotionally, can't suppress, control their emotions, allow themselves to be taken for a ride, in that regard. Very easy. But simple things, thousands of telescopes see nothing. Why? Because there's nothing to be seen out there. Or little green men causing panspermia, like Richard Dawkins believes in. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. So there's even less time for that to happen. I've done on the other channel, the opinions, Harry Opinions. I've actually done covering physics and religion. So if anybody wants to go over there and check that out, they can go over there and check that out. But yeah, it's nonsense. Now, has anybody used the actual description link to get their date? So they've actually changed. Screenlab's actually changed all these sort of things, their menu bars and all that, and I'm still trying to get my bloody head around them. So I can use share. That's a bit different. Oh, interesting. So they've combined the invite inviting guests and all the other sort of options, slideshows and PDF slides, and I'll look at it later. So interesting. Let me just hold on. I think that's it. Why isn't it doing? Oh, now it's doing it. Or do I have to expand it? Oh, I have to. Now I'm confused. What the hell is this doing? I'm gonna bloody get rid of it. Okay. Let me try this again. I didn't look. I did. Sorry about this, guys. I just did not realize that they've actually changed this whole stuff. Let me just check can I actually share the window? I can. Okay. This is weird. I couldn't actually do the other part, but I can do this. Okay. So under the you've got the link. You hit the link, and it goes to this, and it gives you the time that the live stream starts. When you guys actually press on the damn thing, has anybody tried it? Are you getting your localized? Because this is supposed to do it with no time zone, so you get your localized time when the thing happens. Are you seeing this or not? Anyone? Just let me know whether when you click on the description on that button, are you getting this website, the no sort of what is it called, the no time zone, and are you getting your localized your locality, what time zone it's in your locality or not? Just one person. I just want one person to go in the description and click on local time zone link. Just click on that and let me know whether you can actually get this. So you're actually getting your local time, your local area. What about you, Lukey? Are you getting your local area in Brazil? I'm trying to make sure that everybody's getting it, their locality, because it allows me to do the lot on toddler nutrition. Philip, are you getting it? This is the question. Can somebody else other than Johnny tell me that this works in their locality, on their area, that's not in Australia, that's outside Australia? I need somebody external to Australia to tell me that this works for them and it shows their locality. Display time in. Okay, so you're okay. So people are getting their time in their time zone. Okay, good. That's all I wanted to know. That the link is actually working. Okay, I can stop sharing. So I just wanted to find out whether you guys were getting it or not. So because as you can see, I've got a new sort of. I got sick and tired of all the old sort of images that I had for my live streams and all that. And I said, I'm going to change it a bit. And the Eurasian one, I've changed a bit and all that. And I didn't want to put all the dates and times and all that because it restricted me. It meant that I had to have all these templates and all that. Now with this, it just means that I can actually have a live stream whenever, at whatever time I like. And people can click on that thing and get and find out exactly what time it's in their time zone. That's what I'm trying to get. So I'm happy that is the case, because that. Okay, but so Philip, he says it only shows the Oz time. Okay, are you able to tick in that? It's got a little button there where it's actually got an X to get rid of it, and then you can actually pick your own your country and city. So it's got different parts of the world below, like different areas. So let me. How do I do that? I have to retrain myself how to use this damn thing with all the changes that they've actually made. Okay, let me share that again. So we go here, take that out, and since I'm a dual national, we'll go for Copenhagen. So I'll actually will show the time. That's a bit weird. Why is it doing that? Anyway, it doesn't seem to be doing what I thought it was going to be doing. I'll have to investigate it further. Yeah, something's wrong with it. I'm not sure. I'll investigate it because maybe that's not helping people. I may have to go to the old method. Damn. Anyway, I'll try and work something out. Got about 15 minutes to go, so I'll quickly, so I've pretty much covered that. What helps lowering histamines, muscle activation, taurine. Go and check that video that I did ages ago, and avoiding a lot of things. Would a super high-fat carnivore diet help beat our winter blues. Eating sufficient fat and is important in our diet for energy. Live in India, specifically in a place where everybody is hardcore vegetarian. Yep, I'm aware. Yeah, at least they're eating a lot of dairy products, which is good, and they're cooking with ghee, the traditional. The ones that have actually changed over to the seed oils, that's the reason for the high cardiovascular diseases and many other things that are going off, and diabetes off the show in your part of the world. But the people that are still using ghee to cook all their stuff have less problems, but they're not getting sufficient nutrition. Yeah, look, it's egg and dairy isn't optimal, isn't? You need other foods, but you can use seafood, crustaceans to get a lot of minerals and stuff like that. That's another option. And possibly things like chickens. These are other options that could be useful. Yep. Again, it's Tudka is a really good supplement to get the bile working properly again. So if you've got bile insufficiency, Tudka, which is a metabolite that's actually produced from taurine, but it's actually works faster in sorting out the bile ducts and all that. So TUDCA, Tudka. Sorry, I'm going through these really quickly, is because ophthalmologist states cataracts can diminish on a carnivore diet, probably due to the taurine in the diet, because studies have actually shown that taurine that gets synthesized because you need to have enough methionine and cysteine in the diet has a positive effect on, our eyes and our brain, eyes, and heart, but the eyes have more taurine than any other tissue. But those are the three main ones, and the pancreas. Okay, so that's where it's coming from. How do you get liver producing bile clean out? And what I said just a moment ago, Tudka. Any thoughts on total nutrition, species appropriate diet? There's no, just whatever adults are eating, kids should be eating similar, so is my personal opinion on that. Better digestion, harder dried fats like suet. Yeah, they can be okay. You just have to experiment a bit and see what works and what doesn't work for you in that regard. Where am I? Down here. Oops. Do you think meat prices will come back down? Beef's insane in the US right now. You guys are big beef producers. Why is it insane? Yes, yeah, maybe Billy the Kid, you know who you are, Billy the Gatesy Kid. Maybe he's been buying a lot, and many of your other mates, and reducing the supply. Then obviously tariffs would have an effect, because you guys get a lot of from South America. You don't produce enough in many cases, because some of the premium stuff gets exported to China and other places. That's why you have to import from South America. And if you've got on Brazil, Argentina, and places like that, slightly higher tariffs, that could be an effect as well. So careful what you wish for. And that can have supply chain sort of effects. But also there are a whole lot of other issues happening in America as well. As far as Tasmania down here, I'm lucky that a lot of the production is domestic and local. So I'm mostly lamb and pork, and I get it from domestically produced lamb and pork in Tasmania. So, and beef, we've got some beef cattle up north as well, but we get also from other parts of Australia, and the prices have increased a bit, but not massively in any way. Yes, it doesn't help, Bob, remember, real money is gold. So when you're debasing your currency by printing more money, your prices go up, but against gold, the price is stable. See, fiat currencies may go really high up, but their purchasing power may go very low as well for a whole lot of different things. Their real pricing is against gold, which is the real currency. Whether you use it or don't, that's the real currency. And so, unfortunately, in America, there's been, from all parts of politics, out of control money spending. Politicians there have this insatiable need for empire. You can't afford it, basically. What needs to happen is a conversation between all the Western countries and sit down and say, well, look, guys, we're going to have to collaborate on defense because we can't afford it. And you can't. Whatever people think, the problem is people want bigger and better and stronger and everything else. But you need to really pull back from your expenses. And some of the allies need to step up in some of their expenses to be able to allow for more savings in the US. And that means that would also reduce, you'd be able to then start having surpluses, and you'd be able to slowly reduce your debts. And as you're slowly reducing your debts with those surpluses, the money supply goes down. Remember, money is credit and debt. Depends who has one or the other. So it's a balance sheet, but when you increase the money supply, you increase both the credit side and the debt side. And then when the money supply shrinks, those both shrink. So when the banking system was reduced in size in the 50s and 60s down to about 10 to 15% of GDP, and there was a smaller banking sector, there was less money circulating around. That means the purchasing power of your money had more value. That means you could buy more things. Most people could buy a new house with 3 years of salaries. Now, even 20 years of salaries can't cover that. It's the purchasing power. The bigger the banks, the less purchasing power, and the more super rich, concentration of wealth. When you reduce, because assets appreciate as money goes up, but against gold, they remain stable. That's the reason why they don't want a gold standard, the banks. It's the reason why none of them want that sort of system, because they want to basically inflate everything. They don't care if you can't afford to eat or can't purchase a house or rent or whatever. You grubby plebs can live, 2 or 3 families in a house like they used to in the old days when, it was just as bad. That's the sort of rentier, sort of World Economic Forum, beautiful, you'll be happy and, and you won't complain, you'll own nothing and all that sort of stuff. It's a rentier system, neo-feudal, and then you can just reset it any way you like. So that's the problem you have in America. that your whole political system is bought and paid by the banking elite and most other countries to a large extent. It's the reason why they want to make countries indebted so they can control them. See, if your purchasing power is really good, your wife doesn't need to work. She can stay at home and look after the kids rather than them going to school and being brainwashed by the system. You can afford to have your wife stay at home. She'll be happy, less stressed. So the breaking down the families, it's all part of the same thing. What do you think it was? Who was promoting all these sort of ideas and feminism and whatever else? Some of these bankers. You go back and check the Rockefellers and all these people. They're all the same characters because it's in their interest to basically, because guess what happens if you withdraw 50% of the workforce? Everybody else's salary goes up. It has to, because supply and demand. Get more people in, suppress demand. You know, labor is plentiful. Salaries are going to be lower. Like anything, these characters know money supply bigger, you're going to have more problems. So you have to break all these things down, institutions and everything, and demonize them in order to basically turn you into a serf, a peasant, a controllable entity. That's what's happened. Women aren't happy. They're pissed off because in the past, you know, women didn't have any debts. The debts were on their husbands, 100%. The husband dropped dead, the bank lost. The wife walked away. She had her home, everything. Nothing was touched of her inheritance because she couldn't be liable. That's why, you want equality? You get liability. Remember, the vote was basically for people that actually paid taxes, not for people that were citizens that were contributing nothing, zero. We've changed the system. All this equality and all this sort of stuff is to turn you into peasants and, you know, be out of your mind in stress and everything else and turn the whole world upside down. That's why, you know. G'day, Tracy. You know, those are the reasons why we've done it. I've got no problems with people, what lifestyle they want to have. That's their issue. But I'm telling you what was done by these elites to deliberately break down the family, break down everything, because they are more, you can control things much better. Because if you've got a strong family, strong faith, strong institutions, it's very hard to break them down. But if you can break them all down, you can do anything. Just think of these people, you know, they want to upload themselves into AI. They can do it because now they can identify as an AI because you can identify as anything. So you'll get legislation through. I want to identify as an AI god. There you go, Mr. Gates. You're a new AI god. That's why they have to break things down, because they want it all. They want to live forever. They don't want many mouths around. You know, they want us smaller, controllable slaves with high-tech robotic industries which give them power. That's really what it's all about, fundamentally. You know, we're concerned about these little things, that our immediate problems, you know, the cost of living and stuff like that. But really, at the top, they're laughing. You know, so, but this is the reason why people of faith. This is why Charlie was knocked off. Because these people at the top don't like these voices, these independent voices that are basically saying there's a problem with our society. And we need to go back to faith. We need to basically restore that society that was better for the majority. Yes, it means less, it means no welfare as well, because if you've shrunk the system, you're no longer dependent on daddy the state. You've got to go out and work. But you know what? Because you've got less competition now, supply and demand, you're going to be paid more, and you're going to have more disposable income. They don't want to go back to that world, because that world means they have less, and the majority of the population has more of the cake. And you've got bigger middle classes, and you've got a smaller amount of really rich people and a smaller amount of really poor people. They used to be called the golden years of capitalism. Boring, people say. 50s and 60s. What a boring world to live in. So trouble-free. We want the craziness of today. That was a boring world. So bad. So boring. So awful. Yeah, so families are awful. People who could afford to live more comfortably is awful. It's just all boring, you know. We have these cycles. I mean, if you take a look at the Western Roman Empire, they were prostituting their daughters, and men were cross-dressing. You think now that this is happening? Happened back then, till it collapsed, became a mess. In the East, orthodoxy controlled the state. And that meant it lasted for 1,000 years until they started infighting the royal families and killing each other. But until then, it lasted for a long period of time. That's what stability of really family values, faith, and things like that. That's what they provide a society, stability. Yes, it is boring, but I'd rather live in a boring society than be fearful that my next door neighbor is going to chop my head off. Okay? You want to live in a world like, you know, the Horn of Africa, Somalia, Yemen, or stuff like that? That's the extreme version. Or do you want to live in a boring 50s, 60s type environment? Make your choice. You know? Unfortunately, people have been brainwashed to think that that is bad. And having the crazies running around, you know, burning flags and doing this and all the other crazy stuff that they're doing, that's normal. You know? Oh, yes. Justice warriors. Oh, that's normal. Rather than having a properly functioning society. People have been brainwashed so much. I say the best thing you can do is turn off the TV. That's the best thing, or smash it or throw it away. I don't have a TV. It's actually sitting in another location and turned off permanently. I need to get rid of it at some stage. It's my flat screen. I have a projector, and the only time I actually stick that is to watch either a YouTube on the big projector or something that I want to watch, or you know, the odd movie or stuff like that. That's about it. I'm not interested in their nonsense, their garbage, their propaganda. It's all garbage, makeup, and, you know, accentuated just to get you all fired up. It's not non-informative. There's an old saying that that a falsehood will travel around the world multiple times before the truth even gets out of bed. You know, just think of it. If you hear a rumor that somebody's doing this and that, something naughty, immediately you go, wow, you'll spread it around. You'll say, oh, did you hear this? Because it's the flight or fight. So we're focused on the bad stuff and all that. This is why the fear and all this sort of stuff, because they know it works on our psychology. This primitive flight or fight mechanism is what they're tapping into, and then they throw their message, their propaganda in. That's how it works. But if you can pull yourself back and go, hold on, what is their angle on this? And you go, okay, I suspect this, this, and this. Now let me investigate it. And you usually find when you do a bit of an investigation, you go, okay, so that's the angle they're using on this. So that's the new lie, or the slightly reinforcing a previous lie. You immediately start realizing, and you're not as gullible, because they want gullible people to think that what comes out of their mouths is the expert. It's always right and all that. That's just an opinion. and a fabricated opinion at that. If you start looking around media from around the world on the same subject matter, I dare you, go online, there's an incident happening somewhere in Africa. Go and check one of their reels on YouTube and put the auto translate to see what they are saying about this incident and all the other different countries. And you'll see completely different stories in many cases. You'll see uniformity in the West. So you only have to look at your own country. You don't need to check out Germany or whatever else, because they're going to be all the same. They're all part of the same clique. But if you check the local in that African country or Asian country or whatever, and maybe some of its neighbors, and even some of its neighbors may be saying things and they go, they just stuffed themselves up. So let's just amplify the bullshit about that so we can actually say how bad they are. And then you'll go, okay, so that's how that nation thinks about that nation. It's ruling classes, what they tell their people to think about those people. And you start realizing how you're not only being manipulated, everyone's being manipulated. Do you realize it? Everyone is. So stop basically cheering for Russia, cheering for China, cheering for this part of the world or that one. They're all manipulating themselves, others, and whatever else. The truth is somewhere in the middle, lost in the message. And you have to tease it out by listening and, getting some independent voices and trying to tease it together. Because otherwise, you got no idea in all the noise that's around. And that's why when you ask me about certain things, I don't give you a definitive on something that I haven't really investigated deeply, because I'd be lying to you. If you want to listen, go to CNN. You can listen to lies all day long if that's what you want. But I'll tell you when I know something because I've investigated. And if I haven't, I'll tell you I don't. I'll look into it, is what I usually say to people, even on the science stuff or whatever else. Because it's, let alone I'm lying to myself, which is stupid. It's ridiculous and stupid. But the thing is, there are plenty of people out there that are not done, and I'll pick up. And most of my subscribers, you guys are a bit more tuned about these things. Some of you have gone down the conspiratorial sort of trapdoor far too far in many cases and been manipulated from the other end. Usually the truth and most things are somewhere in the middle, being disguised. And it's a matter of teasing out. And that's why you have to listen to more voices. And some people say, even like on X, I put certain videos in and then I'll put something which says slightly something different. And people sometimes get annoyed with me and I'll go, well, this is another voice. Listen to it. Don't stay in your own echo chamber. Listen to that other voice that's saying something slightly different, on this issue. Anyway, I'm getting out of here before I do get into trouble by saying something, and I have the French intelligence bashing down my door. Anyway, see you all. Thanks for being here. And what are we? In about less than 5 hours, we're having the Eurasia live stream. I'll see you there. Take care. And I hope you enjoyed today's live stream. Exactly how I feel about it. Yes. Has anybody done the check between the legs? Anyway, take care, all of you. Thanks, Johnny. Take care, mate. Oh, Tracy, it's always a pleasure to see you. She loves bigoted men like myself. See yous all. Take care.